Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Maya Reyes. I am one of the library's public services directors, and I lead our Young Minds division. Thank you so much for joining us today. We are all really excited, and we hope that you all are too. We're hosting one of our Battelle Family Series author events today, and that Battelle Family Series is generously supported by Battelle. Thanks to Battelle's generosity, each of you will take home a signed copy of Kate's new book, The Hotel Balzaar. We're thankful to them for making this event possible and for their gift toward young minds. Please join me in thanking Battelle. Now, I have the absolute pleasure to introduce our guest. Kate DiCamillo's first novel, Because of Winn-Dixie, became a runaway bestseller and snapped up a Newbery honor. She's also been a National Book Award finalist and a Newbery Medal winner. She's written for a wide range of ages, received countless awards, and has over 44 million books in print in 41 languages. Some of her books have become beloved movies, like Because of Winn-Dixie, and she is a literacy advocate and a Library of Congress National Ambassador for Young People's Literature Amaretta Awards. Please join me in welcoming Kate DiCamillo.
I'm so glad to be here with y'all today. It is just so exciting to me. What I'm going to do is, can you see the screen? Does that, yeah, you can? Okay. I can't see it. Okay, good. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk to you about how I became a writer. And I'm curious, anybody out there interested in being a writer? Can you raise your hand? That's excellent. So I'm going to talk a little bit, too, about how you can become a writer. And then after I do that, I'm hoping that y'all will just have questions and that we can talk. Who thinks they might have a question? Bingo. We're in business. Okay, great. Okay, so let's start at the beginning. Do y'all know Shel Silverstein wrote the Giving Tree? This is a poem by him, and I love it. Listen to the mustn'ts, child. Listen to the don'ts. Listen to the shouldn'ts, the impossibles, the won'ts. Listen to the never haves, then listen close to me. Anything can happen, child. Anything can be. So, me becoming a writer, and then you becoming a writer, but me as a baby. Can you see that? Yeah. I mean, I truly think I was an exceptionally cute baby. I mean, I won't lie to you. So, I don't know if you can see it or not, but I've got this like fantastic little ruffled diaper on. I just, So, I was born in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania in March of 1964. I have a brother who is 3 years older than I am, and he has a baby book that is like this thick. And like the first time he rolled over, the first time he smiled, it's all the date and the time is noted. It's filled with photographs. By the time I came along, my mother was a lot more busy. And so this is the one picture that's in my baby book. And that's all I know about my babyhood is that I was a cute baby. So here I am when I'm 3 years old, dressed up for Halloween. Can you see who I'm dressed up as? Can you see that? Bugs Bunny. That's right, Bugs Bunny. I loved wearing that mask because I could pull it down over my face and then I could stare at people all I wanted because I loved staring at people and I felt hidden behind it. There's a great writer named Flannery O'Connor. This is Flannery O'Connor. When she was a kid, she taught a chicken to walk backwards, and she was famous for that before she was famous for being a writer. But she's got this great quote, "The writer must never be ashamed of staring. There is nothing that does not require her attention." So pretty soon after that Halloween, I got sick. And I was so sick that I ended up in the hospital. I had pneumonia. Do y'all know what pneumonia is? So your lungs fill up with fluid, and it's really hard to breathe. And like I said, I was born in 1964, so I'm old. And back in those days, the way that they treated pneumonia when it was really severe was they would put you into a tent, an oxygen tent, to make it easier for you to breathe. So I went into the hospital, and I was in the oxygen tent. And I spent most of that winter in the hospital. I just couldn't get better. Here's a picture of me. You can see I've got the hospital ID bracelet on, and you can also see that I look worried and unhappy. This is like the hospital yearbook, and I was such a great customer that I made it into the hospital yearbook. I hated the hospital. I felt lousy. I was alone a lot of the time. I was afraid a lot of the time. And part of the reason that I was afraid was the nurses. And back in those days, the nurses all dressed the same way. They had on big white hats on their head, white stockings, white dresses, and white shoes. And so the hats looked kind of like this, and they looked like a ship that they had on their head, and it scared me. And the nurses only ever said one thing to me, which is, "You are a very, very sick little girl." And when somebody with a ship on their head says, "You are a very, very sick little girl," you tend to believe them. So all that winter in the hospital with the nurses, alone a lot, afraid a lot. And then I got out. The next winter, though, I got pneumonia again, and I ended up back in the hospital. And the winter after that, so 3 winters in a row, I was in the hospital, in the oxygen tent. And can you see this guy? How he is not going to catch that train? Can you see that? That's the way it felt to me in the hospital. It was like everything was happening without me, and I was not going to be a part of life at all. And it was a terrifying feeling. It was like everything was moving forward without me. There was one really good thing that happened to me in the hospital, though, and that's that my dad came to visit, and he came in. It was wintertime, so he had on this big overcoat, and in the pocket of his overcoat, he pulled this gift out for me, which was a little red net bag. And inside the bag, there were all these little wooden figures. There was a wooden sun, and a wooden moon, and a wooden farmer, and a wooden farmer's wife, and a wooden pig, and a wooden chicken. All these little animals, and everybody was the same size. So the moon was the same size as the pig, and the farmer's wife was the same size as the chicken, and it was just so pleasing. He pulled the net bag, and he pulled it out, and then he poured all of those little wooden figures out on the hospital sheets, and he moved them around, and he told me a story using those little wooden figures. And I was afraid of my dad. And when he did that, when he told me that story, I relaxed. And when he was finished with the story, he asked if I could tell him a story back. And I used those same little wooden figures, and I moved them around, and I told him a story. And it was kind of the first time I understood what story could do for me, which was to make me feel more connected to somebody, make me feel less afraid and less alone. So anyway, after 3 winters of this, the doctors said, you can't live in a cold weather climate with her anymore. You're going to have to move someplace where she doesn't get pneumonia every winter. So where do you think we went? Anybody have an idea? That's exactly right, Florida. The Sunshine State, right in the center, a small town called Claremont, which is about 30 miles west of a bigger town called Orlando. But when I was growing up, Disney wasn't there yet. So no Walt Disney World. And where I grew up, it was nothing but citrus groves. So, see, that is the Citrus Tower. And you can see all those lines of trees. Nothing but orange trees for as far as you could see. And this tower, the Citrus Tower, was like less than a mile from my house, and it cost 50 cents to go all the way up to the top. You could go all the way up into the crow's nest, the very, very tip top up there. And if you were standing up there and it was a clear day, you could see the Gulf of Mexico on one side and the Atlantic Ocean on the other, and in between, nothing but orange trees. And it was fantastic because you would stand up there and look out, and you could see that there was a pattern to things. Things kind of made sense when you were up there. And we went up to the top of that tower a lot. When I was down on the ground, things didn't make quite as much sense. So, can you see that picture? So, that's my brother, that's me, that's my mother. Who's missing in that photograph? Yeah. So we make this big move to Florida from Philadelphia, and we make it because of me and my lungs. And my father was an orthodontist, and he said, okay, I'm going to sell my orthodontics practice. You guys go ahead and move, and then I'll move down there too. But he didn't. He never lived with us again. It's not that I didn't see him. I did see him. He would show up sometimes when we weren't expecting him, and sometimes when we were expecting him, he didn't show up. He was never a constant presence in my life from that point on. And it left kind of this big question mark at the center of my existence, because adults no one talked about what was happening. It was just like my father was supposed to be there, and then he wasn't. However, the move to Florida worked great in this respect, in that I totally didn't get pneumonia ever again. But I kept right on getting sick. So the next few slides, I am going to be represented by a teddy bear to make this all seem less tragic, okay? So can you see that teddy bear? Yeah. See the pink eye? I got pink eye. Well, no, that was impetigo, so it should actually be more of a purple mark. Anybody had impetigo? Yeah, it's creepy, right? It's like a creepy kind of purple rash that you get. So I got pink eye, I got impetigo. I got pink eye again. I got measles. Anybody had measles? I got chicken pox. I got more impetigo over more parts of my body. I got pink eye again. There's here I am, first grade, school picture. What's going on with my eye? Pink eye, that's right. My mother stopped buying the school photos because it was always a picture of me with one eye swollen shut. I got measles a second time. People will tell you this is not possible. It is possible. It happened to me. I got pink eye again. Yeah, I got measles a third time. Also, this is when the doctor said maybe we should send her off to an institute for research. So, and I got, oh yeah, that was mumps. I got scarlet fever. I got pink eye in both eyes at the same time. I missed so much school. My mom was raising us on her own, and she was a school teacher. So she would go off to work. The neighbor ladies would bring me lunch and check on me. And guess what? We did not have a TV until I was in 4th grade. So what do you think I did all the time when I was? That's exactly right. I read books. And it was great. I mean, I didn't want to be homesick, and I didn't want to feel sick, but it was really, really a gift because I learned about the power of books. Here are some of the books that I read. Harriet the Spy. Yeah, it's so good. It is basically a primer on how to be a writer and how to carry a notebook around. I loved Abraham Lincoln. Y'all know Abraham Lincoln? That's so good. So poor that he didn't have shoes. He would walk 20 miles to borrow a book in his bare feet and 20 miles to return it, and I wanted to read everything about him that I could. I don't know if y'all know The Borrowers. Anybody read The Borrower? Oh, so good. Tiny little people this big. They live in the floorboards of your house, and they borrow things from you. And there are 5 books in this series. They are spectacular. They convinced me that you can be really tiny and be really brave. Paddington? Yeah. How many of y'all have seen the movie? I think there are 2 movies now, yeah? And the books are fantastic. And the same thing here, like reading about Paddington and how he was like, he came from darkest Peru and ended up in a train station in London, the Paddington Station, and found a family. It was very comforting to me. And the kind of family, anybody know these? I don't know if they're even still in print. It's about a family in turn of the century New York. They are fantastic too. So I read and I read and I read. And not only that, I had a mother that read to me. And also when I was in school, I had a teacher who read to me. How many of y'all have teachers who read out loud to you? Can we have a round of applause for your teachers? Yes. That is fantastic. Did y'all see those hands go up? Thank you, teachers. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Because what I always think is, I was a kid who was getting read to at home, and I could not wait. This is Mrs. Boyette. I could not wait for Mrs. Boyette. Every day after lunch, all year long, she read chapter books to us. I could not wait for her to do that. Mrs. Boyette, I thought she was probably about 92 when she was teaching me, and now I see that she was probably younger than me. I loved her. I loved her. And can you see me anywhere in there? Can anybody figure out where I am? Right there. In my brownie uniform, I look a lot like a chipmunk. And every time I see that photo, when you write for a living, people always say the same thing. Did you always know that you wanted to be a writer? Did you want to be a writer when you were a kid? When I look at that picture of me as that kid sitting in that classroom, I want to tell you I had no idea that it was something that human beings did. And that's why I'm standing up in front of you right now to tell you this. That it's like, I loved books so much, I didn't think that human beings made them. I didn't know that it was something that I can do. And so what if it is something that you want to do? Where would you start? What would you do? I'm going to give you a few tips. The things that I would have said to this kid if I could have. Read. How many of you love to read? Again, could we have a picture of that? I mean, that is fantastic. And anybody who wants to write, when they get the assignment to read, you should be thrilled to get it. So that is your first thing to do if you want to be a writer, is to read as much as you can. And the second thing, yeah. Because can I tell you about me? That, like, I got the idea in my head in college that I wanted to be a writer. And what I did was I got a black turtleneck, because that's what I saw writers wearing, right? And I put it on, and then I sat around and told everybody that I was a writer, and I didn't write anything. You have to figure out a way to do the work of it. For me, I figured out what worked for me was to do 2 pages a day. But it's whatever works for you, but you have to figure out a way to do the work of writing, and it is work. And guess what? It's not going to come out right the first time. You have to rewrite. Do y'all know about sloppy copies and all of that? Yeah. It does not matter how talented you are. It is not going to come out right the first time. You have to rewrite it. You have to rewrite it again and again and again. My editor is here. Where's my editor? There, she's all the way back there. See her? Her name is Andrea. So stand up, Andrea. Yeah, there she is. So I just want to talk about rewriting. You have to rewrite for yourself. So before it gets to Andrea, before I send my story to Andrea, I have rewritten it usually 5 or 6 times. Then it goes to Andrea, and she has me rewrite it at least 2 more times. And she helps me because she sees things there that I can't see in it. So it's not only do you have to rewrite for yourself, but then you also have to accept help from somebody else who can show you how to make it better. So if you want to write, you read, you write, you rewrite, and you rewrite again. That's right. And you keep a notebook. I always have a notebook with me. The notebook is a reminder to keep everything open. My eyes and my ears and my brain and my heart. And it's also, remember that quote from Flannery O'Connor about staring? It is a reminder to me that everything is my business. I am always eavesdropping. I am always listening in on other conversations. I'm always taking out the notebook and writing down what I hear. This might not be polite, but it is a great way to get ideas, and it's and to pay attention to everybody around you and everything around you. Always have a notebook with you. And in the notebook, one of the things that you can do when you think, how am I going to turn something into a story? You can ask 3 questions, which I find are really powerful. You ask, what if? Why not? Could it be? So how do you get stories out of those questions? Well, what if you say, what if a dog finds its way into a grocery store, right? And a little girl finds that dog. What if? Or could it be that a mouse can actually save a human princess? What if? Why not? Could it be? Or what if there's a rabbit, a toy rabbit who gets separated from his owner? What if? Why not? Could it be? Could this rabbit find their way back home? Or what if there's a pig who loves toast with a great deal of butter more than anything else in the world? What if? What if? And if you ask those questions, if you read, and if you write, and if you rewrite, and if you keep a notebook, and if you ask those questions, after a while you're going to get stories. You're actually going to have stories that you can send out into the world. So when you send those stories out into the world, what do you get back? Not money. And you might get feedback. Almost always what's going to happen is you get a rejection letter. I'm going to show you what some rejection letters look like. Dear writer, we don't like it. Thank you for your foolish optimism, the editors. That's what you get. Here, let's look at another one. Dear writer, we still don't like it. Keep trucking, the editors. That's a rejection letter. Wait, I want to show you one more. Dear writer, no! And so on, the editors. So you will get a lot of those. Do you want to guess how many I got? Not 50, not 10, no. Not 5, nope. I know. I want to tell you, though, that that's always the reaction. And I have literally stood in front of this number, literally all over the world. And I think the same thing every time, which is, what if I had stopped at 472? What if I'd given up? And so I say to you, if you want to do something, you can't make yourself talented. You can't make yourself lucky. It is within your control whether or not you're going to do the work. And it is within your control whether or not you're going to be relentless about sending the work out into the world. So that is within your control. You cannot give up. And because I didn't give up, for a long time I heard no, no, no. And then I got a yes. And that yes turned into all of these books: Tiger Rising, Magicians, Elephant, Flora and Ulysses, Raimi Nightingale, Louisiana's Way Home, Beverly Right Here, The Beatrice Prophecy. All of the books are the product of the no's that came before. So if there is something that you want to do in this world, it is within your control to not give up. It is within your control to be relentless. You can do that. So remember this poem about the mustn'ts and the shouldn'ts and the don'ts? People will say that to you all the time. But that the truth is right here. Anything can happen. Anything can happen. And that kid that I wish somebody had told that to me, that little chipmunk kid, so I'm telling it to you. Anything can happen. You can do anything you want. So don't forget that. And now you're going to ask me questions. And I'll come to you and I will repeat your question so that everybody can hear it. Yes. What character do I most relate to? It's a good question. I relate a little bit to the squirrel in Flora and Ulysses who gets sucked up into the vacuum cleaner and who writes poetry. I relate a little bit to Despero, who feels so small and powerless in the world. And also in Raimi Nightingale, that Raimi, that main character, that's a lot like I was as a kid. So, but I also relate to every character in every book. That's part of the fun of writing, is all these different parts of yourself. Yes? What's your favorite book that you made? My favorite book that I made? Do you have brothers and sisters? You have a brother. Okay. So if I were to say to your parents, which of your children do you like the best, would they pick you? No, yeah, exactly. They would say both. First, they would look very nervous because parents don't like to pick favorites. And you don't have you feel you love them equally but differently. That's the way I feel about the book. So I cannot pick a favorite. Yes, right here. My most famous one, probably the one that has sold the most. Andrea Tampa, where are you? Is it Because of Winn-Dixie? Because of Winn-Dixie. Have you read that one? Yeah, you did. Okay, yeah. That's probably the one that is known the most. And that was the first one. Yes.
What's your favorite animal?
My favorite animal? That is so easy. It's a dog. How many of you have dogs? That's great. How many have cats? Yeah, okay, we're not going to talk about cats. Okay, yes. Shh. Let this person ask their question. All right, I'm ready for you.
How many years have you been writing books?
How many years have I been writing books? I'm 60 years old now. I started writing when I was 30. I didn't get published until I was 36, but I've been writing every day for 30 years. And I've got 36 books out in the world, so I think that's right. Okay, all the way in the back right there, yes, you look very sincere. Yeah. What do you do when you get writer's block? My official position, y'all know what writer's block is? It's just like you sit down and the words don't come, right? So what I think is, because the way I work is I do the same amount of pages every day, and I can always make myself write 2 really lousy pages. It might be terrible, but I can make myself do it. So I say to myself, there are bad writing days. I don't say there's a writer's block. I say this was a bad writing day. I treat it one day at a time. And I have found that the very morning that I come down there to do the work when I think it's pointless is when all of a sudden the story will find itself. So it goes back to the same thing as the 473 rejection letters. Don't give up. That's the trick with writer's block. Yes, right here. How long does it take me to write? So how long does it take me to write in the morning? I'm going to do that first because I get up out of bed and I do the 2 pages. I'm usually in and out of there in an hour. As soon as I hit 2 pages, I'm up. I cannot wait to get out of there. I don't want to do it. I'm always glad I did it. How long then does it take to turn those 2 pages a day into a novel? It usually takes about a year or a year and a half. So it takes a long time to make a book. And then once I turn it into my editor over there, then it has to be designed, typeset, illustrated, so that takes a long time too. You did a beautiful job listening to me. Thank you. I appreciate it. Yes, right here.
What's the first book that I ever made? The very first book that I wrote was Because of Winn-Dixie. It was the most exciting day in the world when they told me they wanted to publish that. So, yes. How old was I when I wrote the first book? I was 34 when I wrote the first book. And that seems old, I know. And wait, you're going to get older still. It's incredible how it happens to you. Adults, you can also ask questions. Yes, right here, please. Why did I write Because of Winn-Dixie? Well, like I said to you in the PowerPoint up there, I grew up in Florida, and now I live in Minnesota. And when I moved to Minnesota from Florida, it was a big shock for me because I didn't own socks. I thought, how cold can it be? And so I was homesick for Florida, which is where Winn-Dixie takes place. And it was also the first time in my life that I'd been without a dog. And I saw how many of you raised your hands and said that you have dogs. You have a cat and a dog? Well, we'll talk later. But you like the dog better, don't you? No, you don't. Okay. There you go. But I could make up a dog. That's where Winn-Dixie came from. Homesickness and making up the best dog that I could think of. Yes. I'm going to stare at you really hard until you remember. That will help you, right? Yeah. Do you want me to come back to you? What is my most favorite book? Of all the books in the world? Do you have a favorite book in the world? Do you? What is it? See? It is. If you love to read, to pick one favorite book is really hard. How many of you have read Charlotte's Web? That book is right up there at the top of my list of favorite books. And but although I did not read it when I was a kid, because how many of you have read Black Beauty? Yeah, Black Beauty. After I read Black Beauty as a kid, I would not check out any book that had an animal on the cover. And so I didn't read Charlotte's Web when I was a kid because I was afraid of what was going to happen to the pig. Yes. What made me think of the characters in my books? You know, a lot of times what happens with the characters in my books is they start with a name, and naming a character is the only part of writing that is easy for me. And once the name pops into my head, then I have an idea about who the character is. And then, can I talk to y'all about writing a story and whether or not you plot it out in advance? Because what I do is, once I have the character, I follow the character through the story. I do not plot it out in advance. And once I was talking to a group of kids in a school in Connecticut, kind of like this many kids, and a little boy raised his hand and said, what if your teacher says that's the only way you can write a story? And I said, is your teacher in the room right now? And he said, yes, that's her right there. So I had to turn to that teacher and say, if I was the 9-year-old in your classroom and you told me that was the only way to write a story by thinking it out in advance, I couldn't do it. The way I do it is I follow the character through the story. So teachers over here, I see you over here being very wonderful. What are your questions? No? Did you see that round of applause? I mean, like, y'all are all reading to your classes. Thank you so much. It's everything. Yeah. Yes. Yes, you.
So you said you always carry your book around, but I don't see it anywhere.
It is, you know what? It's so funny that you would say this, because I was going to say when I was talking to Andrea Tompa, my editor over there, she's got my purse, and in my purse, open it up, Andrea. Yeah. There's the notebook. Because what if somebody says something and it's got a chipmunk on it, because I'm a chipmunk. Yeah. So, yep, there it is. I'm never without it. I was like, when I was leaving the hotel, I was going to leave it with my luggage, and I thought, what if I need it? So, shh, okay. We haven't gotten over here yet. Yes. Oh, you did it. You did it. Good. No one has ever asked that question before. So you mean like we would do a book together? So if I had to pick one author to do a book with together, who would I pick? Yeah, no, not. I've done one like series with another person, and it's great to write with another person because then you don't feel like you have to come up with all the answers. Who would I want to do it with? How about Linda Sue Park or Kelly Yang? Do you know them? Anybody? Yeah. So yeah, because I would want somebody that I know is really willing to work hard and also knows what they're doing. It's a great question. Yeah. Because I think it's kind of scary to write on your own. Okay, here, we're going to get to the brave adult right here. Yeah.
So, when the kids start out writing and do a brainstorm list and come up with a topic and they do beginning, middle, end, all that kind of stuff, what is the best way you think that they should hook the reader?
So when you're brainstorming in your class to write a story, and you're like coming up with ideas, and you're thinking what's beginning, middle, end, what is the best way to hook the reader? I will tell you the best way to hook the reader. The best way to hook the reader is if you're hooked as the person who's writing it. So there is no right or wrong way to do it. But if you feel invested in the story that you're telling and coming up with, then your reader is going to feel it too. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay, yes. I cannot answer the favorite book that I've made because I love them all equally but differently. If you really pushed me, everything that's happened to me as a writer has happened because of Winn-Dixie, that first book. So that's right up there, but not a favorite, just the one that let me do this job. Yes, you're waving over there. Yes, you look very happy. We're going to do 2 more questions. So, and wait, I want to say this. I'm going to get to you in a minute. Y'all have done a fantastic job of asking questions, of listening, and I super, super appreciate it because there is a lot to pay attention to in here, and you've done a wonderful job. Okay, are you ready? Do some of my other books have colored illustrations in it? Yeah, some of them do. The Mercy Watson, for instance, do. Yep. This one that you're all getting today is all black and white illustrations. Okay. Okay. We're going to do 2 more questions, and you're the first of the last 2. Yes. Who's my favorite author? Who's your favorite author? So you're going to list off, right? You can't just narrow it down to one.
I like you a lot. I love all of your books. Your plot structures are really good, and it has a lot of heart.
Oh, you're a serious reader, aren't you? She said she liked my books, and the plot structure is really good. That one matters to me. And the other thing that you said is they have a lot of heart, and that matters to me even more than the plot structure, so thank you. But I, as somebody who reads all the time and who lives to read a book, cannot narrow it down to just one person because so many different books and so many different writers have mattered to me at a certain time. But you're a serious reader. I can tell that. Okay, you're going to ask the last question. Oh, 2 readers, I bet. Okay, that's why I'm pulled to you. I recognize fellow readers. Okay, so as the person who asks the last question, you're going to sum up everything that we talked about, and then you're going to move the conversation a little bit forward. I'm kidding you. Okay, what's your question? Yeah. So the question is, and this is for all of you who like to write, and it is true of every writer. You start something, and then you don't know how to finish it. And this is beginnings are always more exciting. Everything is possible. And so you start it, and then you abandon it because you don't know how you're going to tie it all up. And the only way it's going to work is if you show up and don't give up. So anytime I'm thinking, okay, I don't know what's going to happen in this, and I don't want to work on it anymore because I don't know what's going to happen, I ask myself 2 questions. am I feeling lazy? Am I feeling afraid? And almost always it's yes and yes. And I know that those are not good enough reasons to abandon the story. So keep on working on it past the laziness and the fear. Does that make sense? Yeah. You two were a great way to finish things off. I see you up there, Elisa. Yeah, okay. So let's do one more thing where I say to all of you, thank you for being here. Thank you for paying attention. Thank you for being readers. And thank your teachers for reading aloud to you. I am so, so grateful. And I'm so glad I got to spend this time with you. Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kate.